Hi all, welcome to the real-time version of the video that you saw on YouTube. In case you haven't signed up to my website, please go to the link that I'm putting up here and go to giveaways and then sign up to my website, because I'll be sending out a lot of videos like these to my subscription list. So today's video, I will start by showing you around my video setup. So this is normally where I do my paintings. And I have this huge ring light that is overhead, which kind of illuminates this setup. And this is my Windows machine where I have all the software that I cannot run on my Mac. And I also have this bristle board, like it's like a cardboard, that I have laid on top of my desk so that I won't stain my clean desktop. So this is the bigger picture. Let me just tell you that my table is super messy right now. That's because I have been painting from morning. That doesn't happen often. Some days I just take the whole day to complete as many paintings as possible. So this is one of those days. That is why my desk is so messy. And this is the tripod that I use to record this video. I will hoist my phone on this cap before I start recording. The paper that I'm using is Winsor and Newton pastel paper. This paper comes in 6 different colors, and there are 2 sheets or 3 sheets from each color. I got it from one of my local art supply stores. I live in Colombo, Sri Lanka, by the way. I have used up most of the papers. So I'm gonna use this gray color piece of paper for this particular painting. This paper is 72 pounds. It's not the best weight for oil pastels. So this is a question that comes up a lot on my YouTube videos. What is the best type of paper for oil pastels? So personally, I use Canson Canva paper, which is 136 pounds. And I also use Strathmore watercolor paper. It's one of the best papers I have used. I'll probably do a separate video on what type of papers I use and why and what I think is the best for oil pastels. The first thing I'm gonna do is place this paper neatly on my desk and put masking tape around it. And I buy these from my local supermarkets. There's a stationery section in most supermarkets. Alright, so my paper is all taped down now. And when I remove the masking tape after the painting, this section will look like a margin. I guess people do this because in case you want to frame this, a part of the painting won't be taken to the frame. And also I have got my computer over here now on my table, and I usually listen to some YouTube video or a song, or if I have a reference image, this is where I project my reference image so that I can look at it constantly when I'm painting. And this is where I normally have my water bucket, and I'm gonna use Mangayo water-soluble oil pastels in this video. Alright, so we are ready to start, and before I move on, I want to show you that I'm using white charcoal pencil to sketch out areas of this painting. But the thing is, you don't need white charcoal pencil. You can use black charcoal or any other normal regular pencil. It doesn't really matter what you use because at the end of the day you'll be covering up all the marks with your pastels. I want to talk a little bit about why I selected Mangayo water-soluble oil pastels for this painting. I find this medium to be easier to paint with, and at this point I haven't done a painting for almost 2 months. The reason is because I was busy publishing my second children's book, and I had to do the marketing for my first children's book, and while I was also writing my third children's book. So I had a whole lot going on for the last 2 months, and I was setting up my website. All those things were done by me alone, and I did not have time to do any painting at all. So because of that, when I got back to painting, I didn't have the confidence actually to do a serious oil pastel painting. The reason why I'm telling you this is because this is a very good way to get some experience in color mixing and shapes and colors and blending before you actually do a serious oil pastel painting. So I am now starting to put down the main elements of this composition. I'm looking at a reference image. I got it from the web, so please note that I don't own any rights to this image. Now what I'm doing is I'm looking at it and I'm filling in the paper, filling in the composition. This composition has a lot of sky. That's another reason why I selected, because the land area and the sea is very minimal. It's about 1/3 of the entire picture. So I don't have to focus on a lot of detail because this clouds, the sky, there's a lot of room for error. So somewhere over here in this painting, I can see that there's an opening in the sky where the sun is coming through. So you can kind of add straight lines going down. They have to be straight lines because they are sun's rays, and you can just kind of like it comes through like this. That's how I see it in the reference image. So this is my first composition, and oops, I think there's a bit of a land area coming through here. Alright, so that's all you need. You kind of blocked off the main areas, and you're good to go at this point. So I'm taking out my water brush now. This is the brush that I'm using. As you can see, it's filled with water. I got a water brush with almost all of the watercolor sets that I got. Since it's already filled with water, I don't have to use the bucket quite a lot. And then I also need a clean tissue because I will have to clean my brush quite a lot. So my initial task is to get those colors and shapes in. Now I have got the shapes. I just have to fill this with some basic underline colors. Just look at the colors of the reference image, because you just have to fill your shapes with colors at this point. You're not focusing on details. And I usually start with dark colors, because if you remember in my oil pastel blending tips and techniques video, I tell you that usually you apply lighter colors on darker colors. Of course, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, you apply your darks first. So these are the shades of blue that I have in my set. This is the darkest, this is the medium, and this is the lighter color. And I'm gonna use all three shades in my painting. And I will blend them and mix them up as I go. So I'll be creating more shades of blue as I go. And then I'll be mixing this up with grays. This is the medium blue and the name is sky blue. But I found that the lighter blue is better for the sky than sky blue. Now I'm gonna put a little bit of that over here and a little bit of that over here. And you kind of get the idea what I'm doing. So block in your colors from darks first. Start with the darks. And I can sense now, as I said, look at your reference and you have to kind of do what your eyes see. So I can see that in the water there's a bit of green involved in the water. There's a touch of green in it. So I got my darkest green in the set, and I'm putting in some green colors to the mix of blue. Remember, when I blend this out later with water, they will dilute the colors. They will dissolve the colors and create new interesting shades. Some of those shades I don't even know at this point. I just kind of use my gut feeling and add in some green, and we'll see how it goes. Now, one thing about this oil pastel, water-soluble oil pastel set is that the colors are very saturated. In a realistic landscape, I find that to be a little bit of a disadvantage because these colors are not very earthy, and they pop out a little bit more than what you see in the natural world. A good way to desaturate your colors is to add a little bit of gray into your mix. Gray is a neutralizer. So I'll show you by doing a little swatch test here. So just to demonstrate, this is the original green that I used. So I'm gonna put a block of green over here, and I'm gonna put some gray into the second mix. So the first mix is just green, second one is green plus gray. So when you mix with water, we'll see how the colors look. So when you mix it up, you'll see that this will be a little bit less saturated than the other one. Now that's how that looks, and you have to completely clean your brush because you don't want pigment from the other swatch coming onto this one. And then mix the second swatch. I don't know if you can see that because I think the white balance of the phone has been set to a certain amount. So let me just reset that, and then you will be able to see the difference. So as you can see, the second swatch is less saturated, means there's less green in it than the first one. So I find that the second one is a little bit more earthy. So according to that test, I'm going to add some gray into my mix. Anyway, there's some gray in the sky. If you look closely at the sky, you will see that there are some gray areas in the sky. So I'm adding in those colors. And now before you move on to anything else, take your water, clean your brush properly, and then mix the whole thing up. This is going to be your first layer, so don't worry if the colors look all off. This is just the first layer where you cover the background, and you want to just block in the main areas of color. So don't worry if it doesn't look nice, just blend it and try to cover the background as much as possible. Alright, then leave it to dry, and you can come back when it feels dry to your touch. It's gonna take about a couple of minutes actually. And then add in your second layer. Actually this is not the second layer, this is still the first layer because you haven't covered your background properly. And what I'm doing is filling the rest of the sky. So it's just playing around with your blues and your grays. So far these are the colors that I have used. I have used all of the blue shades, gray and green. And then I'm gonna get black color because I can see that the line over here is very dark. It's actually the darkest spot in the painting, in the reference. There's a lot of darkness over here. Actually you don't have to add black, you can even add green. So if I take the darkest of the dark green, I can use that instead of black. And then it gradually changes to blue, and here and there you can see some grays, and then it slowly goes on to lighter blue shades, so it gets lighter and lighter towards that line. And interestingly, I see just the lightest touch of brownish color over here in the sky. So this scenery seems to be in the evening. So where you can see golden color in the sky. I'm blocking in some brown color. Here's another thing that you have to pay attention to, which is color balance. When you're painting, if you have large blocks of color that seems to be predominantly taking up a certain area, then the color balance of the painting is not very good. For example, the mountain range is predominantly brownish, the rest of the image is mostly blue. So you have these two predominant colors, blue and brown, and if you don't make sure that you balance those color compositions, it might look a little stressful to the eye. Just try to make sure that you put some cool colors into the mountain range, add a little bit of brown into the sky and the rest of the image. Now I'm going on to blending this whole thing. I have added a lot of colors. Now it's time to blend that out. Remember to always blend from the whites, from the light to dark. So I'm gonna start with the whites on the sky, and then I'm gonna keep blending towards the darker colors. Okay, so I'm done blocking in the rest of the sky, and now I'm taking my water brush like I did before, and I'm going to blend this whole thing using as much water as I need. So I'm going to fast forward at this point. You now know what I'm doing. I'm taking my water brush and I'm blending all of the colors that I blocked in earlier in the sky. So I keep squeezing my water brush. In places where I feel like that's not enough, I dip my brush in the bucket and take more water. This is the point where I use a lot of water actually. Alright, so I blended out the sky and I'm going back to the water for a second layer. So before you do that, make sure you wait until your initial layer is completely dry. By completely dry, I mean it's dry to your touch. In the water, you can see that some areas are really white. These are called highlights. So in a painting, there's typically two kinds of things called shadows and highlights. Shadows are darker areas. Those are the ones that we focused on first. And the highlights are whiter, lighter areas. And those are the things that you add on to your painting later. If you look at it now, you'll see that it looks a little bit more realistic. And now it's time to add the grassy areas beneath the mountain range. So just as before, I'm starting with the darkest green. And as I move towards the sun, you can see that I'm adding lighter and lighter colors. That is to create the illusion of highlight sunlight falling onto that area of the mountain. And then blend all of the colors again using a lot of water. And then I'm moving on to the mountain range. I kind of used the brown color that I added to the sky as the predominant color of the mountain range. And that brown is very saturated once again. That is something about this palette, the way the pigments are made. The colors are very saturated. So I'm adding in gray just to desaturate the brown and make it look a little bit more earthy. So once again, there's no magic formula here. I just add in the colors as I see it happening in the reference image. But I also don't follow the reference image one on one. I just get some kind of idea from the reference. I block in mid-range colors using brown, and then I add some shadows using black, and just to desaturate the browns I add some grays. Once again, for the mountain range, this is the first layer, so I will be taking my water brush and blending again using a lot of water. So I'm gonna fast forward the video because you already know what I'm gonna do. And then you have to wait for it to completely dry to add your second layer. And what I'm doing here is keep repeating the same thing I did on the first layer. So I have sped up the video, but I hope you can catch on kind of what I'm doing. I'm adding layers and layers and layers for the mountain range and also the grass areas beneath the mountain range. Make sure you wait for one layer to dry before you apply another one on top of it. So that's the whole thing. You just keep adding more and more colors. And once one layer is dry, you can get an idea what else is missing in that layer and then add on top of that. So you have to build layers and layers like that. So this technique is called layering. You build up your painting layers and layers at a time. This is a common practice in water-soluble mediums. Also remember to be very gentle with your brush when you're blending colors in the top layers, because if you're not careful you can reactivate the bottom layers and kind of muddy up your painting, because all of the colors will be mixed up together and you won't have any control of what colors you are mixing. So you have to be very gentle when you're working on the top layers. Also don't use a lot of water because that can again reactivate the bottom layers. You have to use water sparingly, and you will kind of see that how adding some warm colors to the sky and some cool colors to the mountain range, you kind of connect the two sections of the painting. This is called color balancing. This is what I told you earlier in the painting, that you have to make sure that all the warm and cool colors are evenly distributed in the painting, unless the painting is something specific. But in a typical landscape like this, usually the colors are all balanced. Otherwise, it will be very stressful to the eye. Those are all subconscious things when you're looking at a painting. Your eye kind of wants to see a balance. So that is what we are creating here. One more thing I have to tell you is this is my own practice. I'm not sure whether this is how all of the artists work, but this is how I work with a reference image. As I said, I don't strictly follow the reference. At this point of this particular painting, I'm not looking at the reference image at all because I have completely let it go. And now I'm working on the colors and the shapes and the mood that I'm creating all by myself without using a reference. This is how I personally work with references. So some of the colors might be a more like fantasy oriented. They are not all that realistic, but that is okay for me because this is the kind of flavor of paintings that I create. Because most of these colors are not very earthy. A river won't be this blue, and a mountain range won't be this yellow. So you get what I'm saying. Think this is probably gonna be the last layer. I think you saw me adding so many layers. I don't even remember how many. This is still kind of like the background, but you have to stop at some point where you feel like you have got most of it done. So I think I'm at that point in this painting. Just be sure you don't overdo the layers. It probably comes with experience too. You'll just get the hang of it after you have done a couple of paintings. You will know that there is a point that you have to stop. And now you have to let the painting dry. Let the painting completely dry. So this is the last final touch of the painting, and what I do here is detailing and highlighting. You add in more details and you exaggerate the shadows and add more highlights. So I'm exaggerating the shadows by adding a more dark into the shadow areas using a black pastel, and I'm also making the highlights pop out even more by adding more white and yellow into them. And I'm also concentrating on making the shapes look more 3D. Right now they look a little bit flat, so this is your chance to make them look more 3D. And now I'm working with the pastels as if they are oil pastels. I'm not mixing them with water at all. This is the final layer. You have to do this. The rest of the painting is completely dry. You have to wait for it to be dry, and then you go in straight off with your pastel. This gives you a lot more flexibility to add details. So once again, I'm gonna speed up the video because I feel like you kind of get the idea what I'm doing here. Use your pastels, water-soluble oil pastels as just regular oil pastels, and that is the last bit that I'm doing. So back in the sky, I wanted to add more yellow shades to the sky because the mountain range has become more golden because I added a lot of yellows and orange into the mountain range, just like when the sun is setting and casting that golden light. So that's what I was trying to recreate there. So because the mountain range is more golden now, I had to add more color to the sky to complement that. And I also wanted to blur the line where the sun is breaking through the clouds. I felt like that transformation is too straightforward. There's like a straightforward line in the sky which is not very natural. So I wanted to blur that line, and then that's pretty much it. I guess I could have added more highlights in the water. You probably can do that when you're recreating this image. You can add a lot of more details. This is just to give you an idea how I am building up a painting like this from scratch, because this is something that the viewers of my channel have been asking for. There have been a lot of requests from people to show them the real-time lengthy video with more details rather than the time lapse. So that is why I created this specific lesson to give you some key pointers like color balancing and how to desaturate colors, what is the layering technique, how to add shadows and highlights. So that's the whole point of this video. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this very lengthy video. It's almost 30 minutes. Just a reminder, in case you haven't signed up to my website yet, please go to my website URL that I have given in the video description and go to giveaways and sign up. I'll be sharing a lot of more videos like this one in the future. So if you sign up, you will get an email every time I post a lengthy video. I won't be spamming you. You will only get maximum of 15 emails from me for the whole year. Alright, and also please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Go back to my YouTube and click the subscription button and also click the bell icon so you get notified every time I post a new video. So thanks for watching this very lengthy video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.